try to get through a bear presentation on, I'm going to cover a little bit of black bear biology, their nutrition, and then really dive into how do we live with bears and coexist with them on the landscape. So a little bit of the biology, management, recruitment, or recreation in bear country, and how to keep them wild too. So what kind of bears do we have here? We only have one species, and that's black bears. Black bears can come in an array of different colors. However, here predominantly we only see them in their color phase of being black. However, out west, like where I lived at in New Mexico, you'll see a lot of cinnamon bears. Different parts of the country, different parts of North America, they'll be in different color phases. Focused on and was done through with the volunteer efforts of hunters and their financial dollars. So we're going to talk about their senses, behavior, habitat requirements, movements, home ranges, diet selection and how it changes seasonally, and their reproduction and some of their winter hibernation. So the weight of male boars is typically larger, 200 to 500 pounds. And when they're coming out of their torpor state, or what folks refer to hibernation, they don't truly hibernate here in the state of Virginia. They go into a torpor. So they'll sleep through bad winter weather events, wake back up, move around a little bit. But when they fully emerge, they're normally depleted of body fat. And so they gain weight very rapidly once vegetation emerges. So here in the mountains, we typically see bears averaging around 200 to 500 pounds. However, east of here, since the population started emerging out of the Great Dismal Swamp with all the agricultural production available to them, we're seeing bears upwards of 740. And it's very common now, 500, 600, 700 pounds in that bracket. They're even larger in North Carolina. Females are typically a little bit smaller. And as you can see here, there was one that was 516 pounds in the bottom top. So they have large, non-retractable claws. And if you don't want to pass this around, it's just a rubber pad. This is actually of a small bear, very small bear. If you want to, what their track looks like in mud. And these claws, the reason why they don't retract and the reason why they're sharp is for digging. They eat a lot of tubers. ripping apart tree stumps and stuff like that, and eating insects, and also for climbing. So they have horrible eyesight. They cannot see very far. They're very nearsighted, if I have that correctly. They can see in color, but their sense of smell is incredible. As we say, 7 times that of a bloodhound. So if you're grilling a steak on your back deck and the wind's blowing in a certain direction, every bear in that direction knows that you're cooking. And that something's good on the grill, and he knows where your grill is. So particularly, they're very solitary animals. They don't socialize well with each other. Males are tolerant of females within their home range. Typically, young males, once they are kicked off their mother, have to go out and establish their own home range. The females can maybe adopt a little bit of their mother's home range with some tolerance. So they're opportunistic feeders, and they're omnivores. So it will later learn that the majority of their diet is actually plants and vegetation. True or false? This is a good one. Who wants to go? True?
That's good.
So the majority of the time, the black bear females will put their cubs up a tree, and they're going to pop their jaws at you. They're going to paw the ground. They might even bluff charge, and they'll come at you. It's very intimidating if it's never happened to you. But that's where you make a loud noise. You become aggressive, and kind of ease backwards and give them a wide berth. And she'll go on. She'll either go up the tree with the cubs, or she'll get the cubs down and they'll leave the area. And that's where we recommend carrying bear spray. Now this is an inert practice one. It's not actually live. There is stuff in here, but it's not pepper spray. So if y'all want to pass this around, take a look. We highly recommend that if you're, even here as homeowners, if you don't hike or anything like that, we recommend that y'all keep that on you for safety and for just keeping unwanted visitors off your deck. Habitat requirements, of course, food, water, shelter, escape cover, and den sites. So historically, and specifically when I was in undergraduate, we thought all the bears were going to, if you read all the literature, we thought at the time that bears were going to be extirpated, that they would never recover in the state of Virginia because everybody assumed that they needed old growth forest. Actually, they don't. They prefer areas with large trees and areas that are harvested trees. So logging actually plays a good role in creating bear habitat because it opens the canopy up in the forest, allows forage production or growth of berries, blackberries, raspberries, huckleberries, a little tiny blueberry that's really good. So forest management is critical. Now that we don't have large fires, and historically a lot of fires were set, you can actually go back and read the natural history documented in Jamestown how they were able to ride their horses for miles and miles because all that forest had been burned continuously over the years. So that it was killing trees, opening up the canopy, and creating good, strong wildlife habitat. And so that's some of the things that we're working at DWR, the Forest Service is working on, logging and trying to burn as much as they can. And we're collaborating with the different state and federal agencies, and we're burning and logging on our WMAs is to create better and more healthier forest for our bear, deer, turkeys, quail, and grouse populations. So some of their movement patterns and how that kind of is cyclic or endemic to the different seasons is that we'll start off in spring. The bears emerge. They're starving. The only thing out there to eat is a bunch of grass. So you're gonna start seeing a lot of movement patterns. They're gonna be focused on grass, and this is when we see an uptick in attractant to trash cans.
at this point they have a severe caloric deficiency, and they're really looking on to pack on calories. So they start targeting bird feeders, hummingbird feeders. They're going to start looking for trash, grills, and they're going to associate food with humans. And then at this time too, we're moving into transitioning into the summer, which is the mating season. And that's when the females are going to kick the cubs off and send them on their merry way and say, I've taught you all you need to know. Go out and prosper. And young bears, being young bears, are going to get in trouble. They're going to make some bad decisions. And so we see an uptick in human-bear conflict. So mating season occurs from June till just about into August. And at that time, when mating does occur, they're able to actually suspend the egg. And it doesn't actually become, it might be fertilized, but it's suspended and it's not going to be implanted until they're later in the den. And if and only if they meet their nutritional capacity on percent body fat, that they can actually support offspring or actually go through the gestation period with enough body fat. So what I like, in the fall of the year, they reach a level called hyperphagia, where they're just running around trying to eat everything and pack on as many pounds as possible. One bird feeder contains 40,000 calories. That's why it is it's easy. They don't actually have to exert any energy to get it, and it's a great reward for them. So no bird feeders. So pretty much from spring till November, no bird feeders, no hummingbird feeders. And they spend the majority of their time foraging for food. Bears eat, like I said, 75% of their diet consists of vegetative matter, berries, nuts, grasses, and fruits. And then 25% consist of insects and carnivore or carrion. However, they do focus during the fawning season for whitetail deer. They focus on fawns, and they will hit the kind of the habitat that does select to go through parturition in at the site of birth. And so they focus on those areas, and they act like little Hoover vacuum cleaners eating fawns. One of their, and as you can see here, even adult grown deer, they can also focus on some other domestic wildlife species. And that's why we say that if you're hiking with a dog or something like that, it's important to consider their safety too and yours, because that can trigger a response from a bear as a competition or as a food source. And if it's a female sow, she may think she needs to defend her cubs from your dog, and then you're tethered to your dog, and we can see how this situation is going to be pretty bad, pretty quick. Blackberries. Can't tell what that berry is there. Cherry trees, acorns, hickory nuts are another good food source. Allegheny chinkapin, American chestnut, if we actually have one producing a nut somewhere. Fingers crossed we can bring it back. The importance of fall foods, like I said, they're in a hyperphagia state in the fall. So they're trying to pack on as many pounds as possible. Roughly about 2 pounds per day starting in late summer, and they can gain upwards of 100 pounds before they reach November. Most of the fall foods are going to be acorns, hickory nuts, and any walnuts, any mass-producing trees. Good years, they'll be able to double their weight. Like last year up here, we had a mass crop failure, and the number of bears were severely reduced in this area because they actually traveled. They moved to the food source. They didn't just stay here and starve, so they went and traveled to some other mountain range. So they can travel up to 100 miles away, seeking out palatable food sources that are nutritional. Reproduction. So they don't start reproducing until they're 3 to 4 years old, and of course that is all dependent on the percent body fat of the female. Notice I put an emphasis on female because males don't really matter in populations. even in humans. They only reproduce every 2 years. Like I said, they breed between June and August. It's called a floating. They are able to float. A fertilized egg can float or stay in suspension, and it's a delayed implantation, and it's dependent on age, and it's also dependent on percent body fat. I like my nutrition.
I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question about behavior during the breeding season. Is there something that we should look for? Like, deer go that right?
You're gonna, so just like deer going into the rut, you're gonna see a lot more activity. You're gonna probably see an increase of bears. The male bears are not gonna be focused on so much on food. They're gonna be traveling, searching for a female. The females are going to be trying to avoid the males a lot of times. If they have cubs, they're definitely going to try to avoid the males because adult male bears will kill their cubs to bring them back into heat. It's a dominance thing, and they want to spread their genetics, their DNA, so that triggers a response out of them. So females are going to become really guarded and protected of their offspring. So you're going to see an uptick in bear activity. You might see them crossing the road more frequently, more bear activity. Typically, we don't see that much bear and human conflict during that time because, like I said, everybody has their mind on something else. Cubs are born mid to late January. They can have anywhere from 2 to 5 to 4. Litter sizes, like I said, are extremely dependent on the actual percent body fat of the female. The cubs are born blind. They're helpless. So they're extremely dependent on their mother, and the female invests a great deal of energy, knowledge, and learned behavior into those offspring. So by having an adult female teaching cubs different behaviors, that's where we come in as citizens or part of a community, that we don't need to educate a female or another male by teaching them that, oh, you can come to my house and I'm going to provide a food source for you. Because like I said, it's all learned behavior. So if you have a sow with cubs that has been taught that they can show up to this residence or any other house or a vehicle, then that they can gain food easily. It's a learned behavior, and it's extremely difficult, and some would even argue impossible to unlearn that behavior. So they stay with their mother for roughly about 2 years, 15 months. Winter hibernation. Here in the mountainous region, you're going to see predominantly den sites and cavities of trees. However, you can also stumble across some ground nesting. We'll show that here. So this is actually a ground nest, and it typically occurs over in the east. However, it has been documented to occur here in the mountainous region. Like I said, 69% of the bears here in the mountains their den site selection is going to be in a tree cavity or through rocks and stuff like that. A very dense escape cover that offers protection for them. And one interesting thing, that when a bear enters a den or lays down and sleeps for a long period of time, they don't give off a lot of scent. So you can actually stumble up on top of them before you even know you're there. If you start walking through mountain laurel or rhododendron thickets and stuff like that. Old logging slash piles is another one we're starting to see bears are utilizing a lot more. So where you'll see after loggers come through and they might pile up some stuff and log lapses, they'll burrow down in there and make a heck of a little house. So this is bear den sites we've taken pictures of on collared bears over in the Piedmont area. Thickets, blowdowns, just nesting on top of the ground. So mortality. Cub mortality is only 20 to 25%. Loss due to predation, coyotes, bobcats, other species like that will prey upon them if they get separated from their female or their adult female. Adult mortality is extremely low. relatively unaffected by parasites and disease. However, we do have mange that we've now detected here in Wintergreen community in Nelson County. So that has been added to the mange list. So Sarcoptic Mange, this is going all the way back to when we first detected it in 2014. And we have one here that in 2020 was detected, and right here. Of course, now this is actually starting to show up with a lot more mange bears. We attempted a research project a few years ago in treating bears and then turning back out on the landscape, and we were not successful. And unfortunately, this is what mange leads to. So please, if you do see a mange bear, call the helpline and report it, because we're tracking all of this information. It's going to be a part of a research project, hopefully one day. And we're going to be able to measure the rate of spread and how quickly it's spreading and where it's spreading to. So black bear management. Bear populations, well, it's actually a success story. So bears occur in all 13 southeastern states. So of course our largest population is in the Great Dismal Swamp, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and the Allegheny Mountains. And that's where they originally that's where the last stronghold of them were found when they were extirpated from the state of Virginia almost in the early 1900s. And that kind of, so this chronological map actually paints a really good picture, and this is something that we should all celebrate because it's a recovery of a species, and not too many states can say that we recovered a species. And it wasn't just a state agency, it wasn't just hunters, it was everyone participating and working together. So in the 1970s, bears were only located along the Blue Ridge and the Alleghenies in just a small pocket down here in the Great Dismal Swamp. By 1980, the home ranges and the population started growing, and this was through regulation. No females to be harvested, no females with cubs. No female with cubs to be harvested. Bears have a minimum weight. That all played key factors in restoring the population. You were only allowed to take one a season. So in the 1990s, we started noticing that the bears were expanding even more, and they were using river drainages to expand their home range. I remember in the 1980s that you didn't see a bear, and if you would go all hunting season and you might see one, and it wouldn't be a legal bear to harvest. Now it's quite common. So by the 2000, bears pretty much occupied all of the state of Virginia, with occasional sightings outside of the mountains in the river corridors. And our present black bear range is everywhere. So it's actually something to be celebrated. But with this celebration and with this recovery of a species comes a great deal of responsibility. And that's where we're going to talk today and going to transition into how do we live with them. And that's the responsibility. Human-bear conflicts. I thought this slide was very apropos for this location because of a hot tub. So a colony of ants, which is a food source for a black bear, they produce formoric acid. Formoric acid actually, and they can also smell this, which is actually a derivative of a decaying formaldehyde-based insulation commonly found in refrigerators and hot tubs. So if you wonder why the bear is on your deck, gnawing on your hot tub, because it smells like an ant colony. So as homeowners, we have to come up with creative ways to deter these bears from not eating this, not eating our hot tubs or damaging refrigerators or breaking into our house. So bears in your backyard, beehives, and the sad thing is all this is actually avoidable with just in trash dumps. All this is actually avoidable. And we can avoid these things by using bear spray, having that handy. Air horns. If you have a 12 gauge shotgun shooting a rubber round, it's non-lethal. Got some grandkids? A paintball gun. Very effective. Some of the other things that, and I want everyone to come up and take a look at stuff. Electric fence boxes. Building a 3 or 4 strand electric fence is very, I pretty much tell everyone, a homeowner, whether you're growing 100 acres of corn or you just want to keep bears off your back deck, an electric fence box, easiest thing in the world. You don't even have to use wire. You can use poly wire. You can use different stuff. An unwelcome mat. If you can't afford this, then this right here is very inexpensive. We have all this information on our website, and it's part of the packets and paperwork up here to make one of these to lay down at the base of the steps at night, and you can pick it up in the morning. So bears only like to stand on soft ground. So even if you take little sticks and stick them in the ground so they looks pokey, they're not going to put their paw on that. Their paws are very sensitive, so they're not going to want to do this. Might do it one time, but they're not going to do it a second time. And then they'll start associating houses with, oh, if I step there, I'm going to get my foot poked. So they don't like that. These are very effective and inexpensive. You can put them next to your car doors. This is an actual electrified unwelcome mat here, using just an old piece of thermarest laid on the ground in an electric fence box. And you electrify this so if they step on it, it gives them a shock. You can walk on it with shoes without any problems. However, I don't recommend it barefoot. But like I said, right here, this is avoidable by either taking them down and only putting up your bird feeders seasonally. Beekeepers, this is avoidable, the damage is avoidable by using a 4-strand electric fence. Denying access to your deck. Okay, so this is my nerdiness. This is from last year. This is a nearest neighbor analysis, and this is every time someone called and reported a bear breaking into a home, bear damage, bear getting into a vehicle. These are the calls that went to the Wintergreen law enforcement, and I was able to use this information statistically show a correlation or an association with each call that came in, and it identified some hot spots. These hot spots correlated with dumpsters, and it's because we didn't have bear-proof dumpsters up here. So I know that's something that's being worked on. Sarah Peltier is doing a phenomenal job working with Wintergreen to replace the dumpsters up here, bear-proof dumpsters. And also, some of these bear calls were associated with people not locking their doors. I don't know if you go out in the parking lot right now, this will scare you. Every car door opens up the same way. So a bear only has to learn how to open one car door. That's it. Unless it's an older 1970s muscle car, all car doors open the same. They just have to put their paw under and pull, and the door pops open. So locking your doors, using an unwelcome mat outside the door so a bear can't stand there and pull on the door handle. All those little things can keep a bear from breaking into your car and destroying it. Keep bears wild. And this is where the community, this is where we all are striving to work better together at. Remove potential food sources. Do not let a bear get comfortable with your home or in your area where you live at. Use deterrence, adversive conditioning. That's where the pepper spray, the foghorn, the paintball, the rubber rounds, which I don't think y'all can use up here. The electric fences. Some are aggressive, some are passive, but they're extremely effective. And just because it's not on this table up here doesn't mean it's not going to work. This area, something I noticed meeting with law enforcement and talking with other folks, is that the majority of all the homes up here, every window is built and designed exactly the same. It's a crank. You crank your windows open. So all one bear, all he has to do is learn how to put his claws underneath the window and pull. And he's gained entry into your home. So by coming up with a creative way to protect the windowsill to keep the bear from being able to get his paw there, will prevent a bear from gaining entry into your home. Or building the house in building or constructing homes or replacing windows in a way that will prevent or reduce bears from gaining entry into homes. Always be your surroundings, make noise, travel in hiking groups, carry bear spray. This stuff is very light, $30, and when I lived in grizzly country and worked with grizzly bears, I carried 2 canisters and quit carrying a pistol because the gun just weighed too much. And it's proven statistically to be more effective. And you can go on YouTube, the Meat Eater, they have a great new YouTube video they put out comparing the uses of bear spray and the pistol at the same time and their effectiveness. There's going to be opposing sides and opposing opinions, but I will say that you got about 3 seconds if you're getting charged with a grizzly bear to deploy this, or 3 seconds to put a target on, a bullet on target to defuse that situation. You've got a higher probability with less training because when this sprays out, it shoots out 30 feet in a big fog bank. So this is very effective.
How many times can you use that?
Well, if you don't deplete it. So the way it's recommended is to continually using it as long as the bear is there. So with a black bear, you depress it. I don't recommend emptying the can because you don't know, you may still need some before you get out of the woods. But over time, it also expires, and the pressurization in the can, just like a fire extinguisher, you need to replace it and get a new one. Matter of fact, my personal one needs to be replaced. Just give that one to my wife. Oh yeah, and don't run. And if you have little children with you, don't let them run. Because these guys, what it does is it triggers a predatory instinct. And humans running looks like a wounded animal. We're not graceful like a deer. Some of us look horrible while we're running, me included. So there's this going on and legs flopping everywhere. So don't run. Back away slowly, make yourself appear bigger. If you have hiking sticks, make a bunch of noise. And if the bear gets too close, don't be afraid to whack him in the nose with your hiking sticks. They're another very effective tool.
I had read something about the bear spray that you're supposed to spray it in a circle, but then how do you get out of the
No. Because there's going to be a wind there's going to be a wind direction, and if you do that, then you're going to end up ideally you want to use this with the wind at your back. If you don't, you're probably going to the hospital. I've actually seen several families in Yellowstone that thought you had to pre-treat yourself. And unfortunately, they had a trip to the hospital for oxygen depletion, inhalation issues, lung issues. It's a pretty severe irritant. So not only does it work well with bears, but the occasional person that you don't want lingering around. Don't recommend it. So like I said, walk away slowly, make noise, whistles. They're a great tool. And keep your pets on the leash. I can't stress this enough. My wife and I, we actually live right next to Peaks of Otter. We own a farm. We own a mountain. We let our dogs run, but we're also running a risk because my dogs like exercise and they need it. But if we go up on the National Park Service or we go out in the Forest Service, we're backpacking or hiking or something like that, I make sure that they're always tethered and that I have control over them. And then also make sure that I have bear spray, so if something does trigger a response, then I can deal with that situation and protect my dog. And then when you let your dog out at night, it's a good idea to shine a spotlight out there. Make sure no bears in your yard. Make a loud noise. Don't recommend just, if you're living up here, turning your dog loose at night to go outside and do their business and come back in, because might not come back in. If they get aggressive with a bear, they will get crunched. And this is a really good example of why we no longer relocate bears here in the state of Virginia. One, as you saw on the previous slide, there is no place that we can take a bear. Every bit of Virginia has been colonized by bears. Even in Lynchburg City, we have bears living in the city. And so that's why we have to do our due diligence as homeowners and landowners to avoid human conflict with bears. And then also too, they have a very unique ability that if you don't take them 200 or 300 miles away from their original home site, or where they established a home range, they're going to be there. So like we talked about before, remove and secure all potential food sources, garbage, bird feeders, vegetable crops, gardens, beehives, pet food. Don't feed your pets outside. Livestock, poultry food, compost piles, and grills. If you have a grill, I highly recommend, if you get it inside, if it's too big to bring inside, then I highly recommend using electric fence box, electrifying the post on your deck. If you go up into Shenandoah National Park, they've wrapped every signpost in barbed wire. They painted it brown so you can't see it. So as you're driving by, you can't see that the entire sign has been wrapped in barbed wire. And that'll keep a bear from crawling up your deck, chewing on the post. Now that they're no longer using harmful chemicals to treat lumber, they're using salt. They're going to require, during the wintertime, they like to gobble up a bunch of salt. So it becomes a nutritional thing for them. So they'll actually eat the wood for the salt. Shenandoah National Park lost a lot of science. Here we go. Take down bird feeders. April the 1st to, December the 1st. Up here, definitely December the 1st.
What bird?
Oh, there's enough. They have enough food out there. There's plenty of food, as I tell my wife. And I'm shooing off a herd of deer 10 feet from the house. Sorry, y'all are seeing my frustration. Feed your pets, not the bears. Don't leave dog food outside, or cat food, or any other food. The bear will end up coming and taking over that food source and sitting on your back porch eating your dog's dog food. Store your pet food in a secure location. If you have it outside, make sure it's in some sort of container that can be locked and is bear proof. And screen porches. A little thin mesh is not going to keep a bear off your porch. It's nothing to them. They will go through it. They will go around it. They will go over top. They will find a way onto your porch. However, electric fence box. It's phenomenal. 1 or 2 strands of that, and for some odd reason, bears hate electricity. So on my farm, I've now replaced all the perimeter fence with electric fence, because bears coming out into my cattle pasture will run my cows clean through the fence onto the neighbor's property. So, and then all the barbed wire I still have left up there, the bears have completely destroyed it. They just walk right through the wire. They don't care if it's nailed to a tree or if it's high tensile or strong or anything like that. They just knock it down. However, when they hit the 4 or 5 strand electric fence I have, one good zap on that and they want nothing to do with it. So protecting your crops and orchards, same thing. Electric fencing, pick your ripe fruit, and remove the fruit falling from the trees. Easier said than done, but the fence thing, electric fence. Starting to see a pattern, aren't you?
Yeah, you must sell those.
I should. As many as I buy myself, every time a lightning strike, there goes $200. Protect your beehives. Same thing. Electric fence. And we have paperwork. We have designs for everything on our website, and you can find it all, links to everything on the back of the paperwork. Managing and securing your garbage cans in your trash. So this is actually really cool because this was designed by one of our district biologists, Dan Lovelace, and it's really easy. They have tested this. They tossed it into a bear pen, and bears could not get into it. As long as all these clasps are latched down and everything is bolted, this is darn good enough bear resistant. Matter of fact, I think this is the one they put in there because there's bite marks. You can actually, if y'all want to come up, y'all can see the bear tooth marks on there. It looks like old.
But how many comes time to collect the garbage?
So when you take your trash out, and then you just take your clips off, and you only put it out, what, about 30 minutes to an hour before the trash man comes? Just remove the snaps, hook them on the side, and you're good to go. And then I also recommend, if you're leaving this outside and you don't have a way to put it inside a garage or a shed or something like that, to secure it to a tree or any other unmovable inanimate object, you can do that. Don't use ratchet straps or bungee cords because they're made out of material. They will get chewed through. If you secure it to a tree, then a bear can't tip it over. And then by allowing them to tip over trash cans, you're giving them extra leverage to try to break into it. And they'll get mad and they'll throw it down the mountain, so you'll go looking for a new trash can. Like I said earlier, there was a bear we named Dumpster Flipper because he flipped dumpsters. He couldn't get into the bear-proof dumpsters, but he learned that he could roll them down a mountain into the creek and they would bust open on the rocks. So regardless of how full it was, he would just go up, and we have video of this, and just like it was nothing. But this is such a simple, but yet so creative way to address a very simple problem. We do have cost share funds for communities. If y'all don't live up here permanently, you live at another location, you can go back to your town or your community. We have cost share programs where we work with counties on, we're working with Roanoke County on that one, as you can see, to help pay for some of these retrofits. And I'll be honest with you, $30 down at your local hardware store, very simple thing to do. And we have the entire, actually right there, and on some of the back of the brochures, there's the entire printout on how to do it. I think a drill and a few hand tools and you'll be good to go. Like I said, so if you any more information, we have an entire link here listed. It's on the paperwork. Bearwise in Virginia. These are a great organization focused in the Southeast that we've partnered with. Then we also have, there's different books available out there on how to live with bears. Questions? Oh yeah, here we go. Yes, sir.
Does the WPOA work with local bear hunters to control bears that are a problem on the mountain or in Stony Creek? Is there coordination there?
I don't think they're allowing, I really can't speak to it, and I would hate to answer inaccurately. I know that they're harvesting, I think, a little bit on the periphery fringes of Wintergreen property, but not working with a direct bear hunter that I'm aware of.
Because I've had bears chased by hunters in off-season to train their dogs right up through my property.
Training season starts August the 1st. So out west, working with grizzly bears and black bears and mountain lions, I have friends of mine out west that are making a living. We're talking well over $100,000 a year, hazing black bears and mountain lions with dogs. And it's extremely effective. Pushing them out of the cities, pushing them out of residential neighborhoods, out of agricultural land. even at the national parks, they're using houndsmen to manage, houndsmen or houndswomen, to manage species and human interaction conflicts. So we wanted to try that up here last year. And we ended up catching a sow with some cubs, and we did the exact same thing, but we didn't haze her as much or as hard just because the cubs were present. But we did have the houndsman there to walk behind the sow as we turned her loose on site. So we didn't take her from the mountain, we didn't try to relocate her, and we didn't want to euthanize her. And that's one thing too, we're trying to find ways in working with the community so we don't have to euthanize bears. Historically, the management plan up here was, once it reaches a certain tolerance level, then we want you to come up here and remove all the bears, or try to trap and kill as many as you possibly can. And so we're trying to move away from that. We're trying to work with the community more, giving presentations like this, meeting with folks, canvassing neighborhoods, in addition to encouraging people to haze their own bears on their property. Be more bear aware and bear conscious. Go to the Bearwise website. They have a plethora of information on living in areas with bears. So we have started using houndsmen, and we're starting to look into that even more. And only on targeted approaches in certain localities, in certain ways like that, even with agricultural production. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, I live in the Overlook condos, and they replaced my dumpster, and they replaced 3 out of 4 dumpsters up there.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with it is too many humans aren't smart enough to make sure the dumpster's secure properly. So if I've already found it unsecured 18 times, only once after a bear got in, but
Yes, sir.
last year it would have been worse. With the old system, they had a clasp,
Mm-hmm.
and a bear would come along and push on the door, and he would pull the clasp tight.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are cases where they break the clasp, so that's why they changed it, I guess. But I could tell how much bear activity there was because he would push against the clasp. Now I can't tell. The
Yes,
problem
sir.
is now you have a spring bolt you pick up, and then, but you
Mhm.
need 2 hands to close it. That's where the real problem is.
Oh, it.
They get it half closed most of the time. But all I do is I come along and just push a little bit and wide open.
Yes, sir. And that's where I would follow up with Mitch and law enforcement, communicate with those folks and say, hey, maybe we need a sign here, or maybe we need some educational on how to operate these dumpsters. I think that might help mitigate that a little bit. And don't be afraid to say, hey, you didn't get the dumpster closed,
I was
and
gonna say.
that's, you know,
Say something.
peer pressure.
Well, I never actually see them not get it closed. I just find
Right.
it not closed.
Well, we get questions here at the center, and
Yeah.
those are the types of things I'm ready to tell people, making sure that things are secure.
But yeah, the problem is also that there's a lot of renters that are so.
Right, the renters don't really,
And they don't try and figure it out, or they don't care, or, you know, I don't
Right.
know which it is.
So if we all do it as a community, we'll teach them something.
Yeah. I mean, we're all responsible, so, you know.
No, we're not, that's the problem.
Oh, well, right. We may have to give 110% where somebody else is giving 50%, but if we can reach those individuals and hopefully the next time they come up here, they're a little more bear wise, then all the better. But if homeowners either did it themselves or hired a contractor to build a little unwelcome strip on every windowsill, then that would mitigate entry. Or just don't allow electric fence on the deck, or unwelcome mats at the stairs on their deck in their back or front, and barbed wire on the post so they can't climb up. Bears can't gain entry, then no bears getting in homes.
Would they try, do they smell something to gain entry? I mean, they're not just going to windows randomly.
So if someone leaves a cooler on the back of their deck, they may not be able to smell, or the cooler may be empty, but it has residual smells from a weekend trout fishing trip or something like that. That bear for the rest of his life, or her life, will associate that size and shape with a food source. And so one time a bear gets into a refrigerator, every refrigerator they see, they're going to say food source, whether they smell something or not. And they may be able to smell.
So if you have the windows open and you're cooking steak or
No.
cooking fish in the house or something.
You're just wherever downwind, if a bear crosses that scent, they're going to put their nose in the air and head that direction. Yes, ma'am.
Should you not be leaving the windows open at night to get air through?
If I lived up here, And the number of bear problems, yeah, I'm a little more comfortable with a bear trying to get in, just because I'm not afraid of dealing with that situation at that point. But no, I don't recommend it. Unless you have some method that will prevent them from putting a paw or trying to crawl through the window. Unfortunately, and I know a lot of homes up here don't have air conditioning, and I wouldn't have air conditioning up here. So
If it's a second-story window, that would be more of a
right.
challenge.
So if it's, if it's climbing required and there's no ladder or post there that it can climb up, it's not gonna like fly through the air and cling to something. It's gonna have to work to get in. But any ground level windows or something like that, or deck associated windows, I wouldn't leave them open. You're asking for trouble.
Did we ever catch the one bear with mange here?
As long as so we targeted that bear with mange up here. I'm sure there's more than one bear up here with mange. There's so much food sources, natural food sources available. Bears are not gonna, the only way a trap works is to lure them in with food. And, if there's a patch of raspberries over there or blackberries or huckleberries or something like that, then they're gonna choose that over walking into the deep dark tunnel. So unfortunately, no. I think I left them at the office after I grabbed everything. Mange is now, like I said in the presentation, it's moving into Nelson County, and you're going to start seeing a higher prevalence of mange in the black bears. Like I said, please call the helpline number associated on the back. Notify us. Please don't attempt to treat the animal yourself or give it some ivermectin or frontline or something like that. It's not going to work, and you're going to be feeding bears and in violation of law. Code of Virginia. So
Is that nature's way of trying to reduce the population?
what is occurring, there's other states adjacent to us that have a higher density of bears than what we do that don't have mange. Like the state of Maine, they have more bears than we do. They don't have mange. To my knowledge, the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee have a highest density of black bears in the southeast, and they don't have mange. So we know that it's kind of spread down from Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and moved into the state of Virginia that way, and has been moving south ever since. Of course, mange not only is in black bears, but it's in coyotes, and we do have one of the highest densities of coyotes in the southeast. So they can act as vectors and carriers of it. And bears and coyotes and deer can shed, and they'll constantly keep shedding the mites as they go through the woods. And this time of year, mites can live without a host for up to like 17 days. So, if you have a mange bear on your property, it's been on your deck or it's been underneath the deck. On our website, we have how to deal with that information, how that you can mitigate it so you don't get mange, because humans can get mange. And it's not very comfortable. Thank goodness I haven't got it. We recommend Raid Ant and Roach Killer. I don't think we can recommend the brands particularly, but I think it does say on our website that. Propane torch, fire works well, but you don't want to burn your deck down, so don't recommend that. But if you do, so if there is, a bear does lay down underneath your deck and there's a leaf pile and you want to go get the leaves out now, I would make sure that you wear proper, protective gear and stuff like that, so you don't potentially get mange. So I would hose it down with Raid prior to raking those leaves up and stuff like that. Yes, sir.
You may have covered it, I came a little late. I know that there's a legal chase season to use dogs.
Yes, sir.
Could you comment on the use of dogs to re-instill fear?
Very effective. So actually it opens August the 1st. We attempted it up here. Last year, we actually trapped a sow with cubs I talked about, and we hazed her with dogs on a leash. And we had actually marked that bear to see if she was ever sighted up here again, and she wasn't. We did the same thing for the first time in Salem, outside of Roanoke, Virginia. And this bear had done some home damage, and we marked it with orange oil-based paint. And that bear, last I saw, I went with the houndsman actually into the woods, followed it along for a while. It went up and over the mountain, and we never got another report of that bear going around another home again.